Who among us has not heard about the experience of some with sensing the presence of the jinn? Who among us has not felt the experience himself, or heard from those around him that they had already told them? Let us go to Tunisia and read the story of one of the women who had a real experience with the jinn. And as we always say, the trust is on the narrator. The beginning of the story. One of the women recounts her experience with the jinn, saying that she was working in London with one of the foreign tourism companies, and she had rented a small apartment close to her place of work at a good price and distinguished specifications, as she desired. The lady recounts that one day, while returning from work at 11:10 in the evening, and while she was climbing the stairs, she saw a beautiful little girl standing at the top of the stairs, pointing up with her small hand. The lady stopped, and I began to talk to her in the hope that she would know who the girl was, or who was from her family. But the little girl preferred silence and merely pointed to the top. I saw a young girl sitting on the stairs, dressed in wedding clothes and crying. The beginning of the exciting events. It was a girl as if she did not see the lady, and suddenly she looked at her. Then she ran away and disappeared. And the lady heard the sound of the apartment opposite her on the same floor closing suddenly. So I wondered how the girl entered that apartment without me seeing her. The lady ignored what happened and entered her apartment as soon as she entered and closed the door behind her. The lady heard a knock on the door, so she went to the door, opened it and looked outside, but she did not find anyone. I tried hard to prevent her from doing so, until the lady managed to close the door, and then the lady heard a frightening sound coming from outside. Certainly not human voices, but rather the roar of a ferocious animal groaning in madness and roaring in a frightening way, followed by the emission and escalation of loud music coming from the apartment next to her. The lady poured cotton into her ears and fell into a deep sleep. The next day, while returning from work, the same scene was repeated, beginning with the little girl standing on the stairs, which the narrator did not expect to be supernatural. But she was feeling very afraid. This time, she continued to climb, indifferent to what she saw. But when she reached the floor where she lived, she found the young girl sitting on the stairs, who had collapsed from crying. And next to her was an old woman trying to calm her down. The lady passed by them and thought that the girl would. She ran away as she did the previous time, but she did not. So the narrator turned to her and spoke to the old man, asking her about the timing of her stay in this house, and did she move there recently. The old woman answered her, "My name is Amanda, and this is my daughter Cecilia." The narrator told her that she had tried to talk to the girl before, but she did not want to exchange a conversation. They went to their apartment. The narrator went to her apartment after this situation, but she noticed something suspicious. She saw the reflection of the old man's image on all the glass and mirrors inside her apartment, specifically in her bedroom. All the house lights were on, but everything had disappeared, followed by light knocks at the door of her apartment. She went towards the door, and if the girl and her mother invited her to have a cup of tea with them. The narrator hesitated a little and then accepted their invitation. The narrator sat inside the old man's apartment, and the very old style of furniture caught her attention, which is not in line with the modern style. And she spoke with the old man about the loud music coming from inside her apartment. The old woman indicated that her daughter, Cecilia, loves to hear that music in a very loud voice, but she will take care of this matter. The lady tried to understand the story behind what she saw, but the girl refused and insisted not to tell the story. Not something. On the third day, the narrator did not see any of the two girls on the stairs while she was going up, but after entering her apartment, if the door was knocking quickly, the narrator went to find the little girl looking at her with fear and pointing to the next apartment in an explicit request for help from those inside. So she closed. The narrator slammed the door of her apartment quickly out of fear and panic. Suddenly, the glass of her apartment shattered, and all the mirrors of the house, except that with hearing the sounds of screams coming from the neighboring apartment, she thought a little that someone really wanted to help. So she decided to go to the apartment. But when she went knocking on the door, but no one answered her. The truth about Cecilia. The next morning, while she was going to work, the narrator turned to the property guard and asked him about a way to communicate with Mrs. Amanda. The guard answered her, surprised and wondering, "How do you know her?" And here was the shock. The girl, Cecilia, had passed away years ago on her wedding night. The next day, her little sister and her mother went to visit her cemetery, but neither of them returned. Many of her neighbors went to search for the mother and the child, but to no avail. And in one of the few days that followed, a person reported the appearance of the body of an old woman and another of a little girl in one of the gardens adjacent to the cemetery. The police went to the scene of the accident, examined the two bodies, and the forensic medicine did not prove the method of death, except that a sharp drop in blood circulation occurred, which led to the death of both of them at the same timing. The narrator asked the guard to let her into the apartment, and indeed, she found everything she saw with her eyes as it was. The furniture, the loud music, and all the details of the apartment. The narrator says that she underwent intensive psychological treatment after those events, and the psychiatrist did not diagnose her condition, except for a psychological disorder, except for one doctor who told her that she possesses what is known as telepathy with the dead, which is a rare ability.